Hello, friends. Welcome to the Ancient Health Podcast, where East meets West. And today, my guest is one of the sweetest guys I know, full of love and compassion. And you can see it within his Instagram and social media. It's Mr. Doug Evans, and he is the author of the Sprout book. And I will say that Doug, just out of the blue, sent me the sprouts for me to start to grow. And I thought it was really a very warm gesture, but I will say I'm half Korean, so I eat tons of sprouts. So to me, it was like, game on, let's go. But Doug, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Hey, my pleasure. I really appreciate, what you're doing with the ancient flow, because one of the things to me that I love about sprouts is that it's not some wild superfood from some exotic South American country. Sprouts are in the staple of diets around the world, whether it's Korea, China, Japan. And without seeds, there would be no life on this planet. So the miracle of sprouting is that normally you get a seed, it sprouts, it grows into a mature vegetable, an acorn grows into an oak tree and produces 50,000 more acorns. But that's not happening on your countertop, and that's taking 50 years to happen. So the magic and the miracle of sprouting is that it allows every individual, every Homo sapien, to connect with nature, whether they live in a house or on a farm, in a van, and they could grow food. Normally, when people are growing things that are kind of fast and scrappy, they're less quality, they're just lower quality. And what makes sprouts just so fantastic is that the sprouts are fresher than anything you could buy in any farmer's market or any supermarket, because you're harvesting them on your countertop, right? Normally, the average leaf of lettuce in America has traveled 2,000 miles till it gets to the grocery store.
What?
And this vegetable, like the lettuce, the vegetables that are being sold, have been separated from their root system. Right? And the miracle of sprouting is that you get to eat the root, the shoot, the endosperm, the embryo. It is a complete living organism. It is enzymatically alive. It's electrically charged, and the nutrients are bioavailable. So you're tapping into something that's ancient, but it's not only ancient, it's core to survival on this planet. And the fact that we can eat the sprouts in days, and we can grow them without soil, without sunshine, without fertilizer, and that they will increase in volume 10x in 5 days, is something that is so mind-boggling that it flies over people's heads. I grapple with, how do I communicate this power to people? Because it's like, everyone is so busy, everyone is so distracted, they don't get it. And only when someone actually takes the initiative to get a sprouting kit, get some seeds, add the water, and see that it requires no other further inputs other than water, that the sprouts are intelligent enough to sequester the carbon and the oxygen out of the environment, and that they're able to grow in mass, because without the fertilizer, because inside the endosperm and the embryo, it has this stored energy that allows it to grow. And that's like this miracle. And so when we think about that, the sprouts, because of the concentrated phytonutrient activity of the seed, you're getting 20 to 100 times the phytonutrient density of a mature vegetable.
Wow.
So this is something that everybody can do, right? I don't want to shoot on anybody, but everybody can do it. And I don't care if someone's diet is flexitarian, pescatarian, vegetarian, doesn't matter what they are. It is well known, well proven, well documented that vegetables are good for you. Now, there's some people that actually say vegetables are trying to kill us, and they're off in this other psychosis that I can't connect with. And I think it's very impermanent, so I won't go there. But the vast majority of the literature from every major health organization around the world recommends multiple servings of fruits and vegetables every day. And the insight that I had 7 years ago was different than the insight that I had 30 years ago. 30 years ago, when I started to sprout, I looked at the color and I tuned into the vibrational energy of the chlorophyll and of the sprouts. And I was like, wow, these are powerful. I want these in my life. So I started to sprout. And I sprouted for 23 years, just on a semi-regular basis. But it was only 7 years ago that I had the aha moment that the sprouts were vegetables. They weren't just a garnish or a side dish. And that the sprouts were more nutritious, more bioavailable, that the sprouts contain every amino acid to form complete proteins. So, so this is, and they contain soluble, insoluble fiber, and they're alive. Like, how often does someone get to eat something that is fully alive and growing? So the enzymes that are causing it to grow, that microbiological activity, is beyond the comprehension for most people. So literally, I've been talking about sprouting actively for 7 years, right? One of the first people I told about sprouting 7 years ago texted me over the weekend, and they randomly bought the sprouting kit from the sprouting company, started to sprout, sent me a series of pictures, and he wrote, "I finally get it."
Finally, after all these years, after 7 years, finally get it. What did he got it? What hit it? The aha moment, right?
Well, yeah, I think what happened is for 7 years, he just pushed it aside as this side dish, as a garnish or whatever. And what happens is people live either in a food desert like I am, or in urban countries and urban developments where there's no access to high quality foods, or they live in food swamps. So I've always lived in a food swamp where there was some healthy stuff, there's some unhealthy stuff, and everything was mixed together. And it's hard to actually discern what's available, what's good for you. And we also live in a convenience culture. Like to make food during World War II, there were victory gardens, and 40% of Americans were growing their own food. Today, it's 1%.
1%?
1%.
1%.
1%, yeah. And even in states that are major agricultural states like Nebraska and Idaho and Wyoming, those people who live in those states are consuming food that's coming from other states. So it's, everything is just really different and chaotic now. And this is where we talk about ancient and primal and getting back to the origins of nature. Sprouts are nature's cheat code.
Oh, I love that. The cheat code. So when you had your passion, you realized this 7 years ago. I know you've seen amazing stories, but you're seeing that it has all the amino acids, it has all these components, and you said it can be grown in how long? Like
Days.
Quickly.
Yeah.
Days.
As little as 3 days, maximum 7 days, average 5 days.
And you're seeing that when a person, when they start to consume sprouts, so let's say, Doug, they do grow it in 7 days. I hope I'm not jumping ahead too much, but I'm saying, how much does a person would need in a day, like to get like a full benefit of like all the, the proteins and the amino acids? Is there a certain, just like a cupful, or to sustain them, to give them enough nutrients that their body needs for the day?
It's interesting because sprouts are vegetables, right? They're vegetables. So when you think about how much does someone need, it's really in tuned and aligned with other dietary guidelines. So you need many calories, you need so much of various micronutrients and macronutrients. So sprouts fit in there. For me, I've had the benefit of living on sprouts. So for 30 days, I lived exclusively on sprouts.
Wow.
So when I was living on the sprouts for the 30 days, I was consuming 2,000 to 3,000 calories, which is what I would normally consume based on my level of activity.
That's amazing. I'm serious. That's amazing. Okay, keep going. This is great.
So if you were to think about like a cup of alfalfa sprouts, they only have 100 calories. A cup of sprouted garbanzo beans, 200, 250 calories. Lentils, cup of green peas, cup of mung beans. So the U.S. dietary guidelines actually recommend 4 to 13 servings of fruits and vegetables combined. And it's really about caloric intake and then like that's what they want. And there's varying degrees of schools of how much protein people think they need. But one of the great scholars, in our era is Dr. Colin Campbell. And in his book, Whole, he wrote about 80% carbohydrates, 10% protein, 10% fat.
Really?
So, and, there's other people, Dr. Doug Graham, also focus on 80, 10, 10. So you can configure the sprouts in ways that will give you whatever macronutrient breakdown you want. Period. End of story. So for me, I'm somewhat eating intuitively of what's there. And sometimes I will literally eat 4 cups, 5 cups of sprouted garbanzo beans. So that would be just 1,000 calories. And I would be getting, 70 to 90 grams of protein. It's so interesting because when you are eating without added salt, oil, sweeteners, you're able to tune in to what the body really needs, right? Because when you're eating, food that's salty, you'll eat when you're not hungry, right? And the processed food companies, they know that, right? So potato chips and chips, they know that you can't just eat one because it's triggering the pleasure sensors in the brain to eat more. And similarly with fat, like once you start to eat fat, the body starts to have a party and you're releasing dopamine in the brain because in the way that we grew up in scarcity, we did not have access to unlimited fat. So when fat was available, we were eating it to stack on and layer on the calories.
So you were putting on the calories. Like, I want to shoot back. Like when you say the macronutrients of sprouts, how your body will assimilate from the sprouts what it needs. And you're saying some of the doctors saying 80% carbs. I mean, so the high carbs. So some people out there, Doug, are going to say, well, I'm afraid to eat too many carbs or too many starches. So what would you say, like when the doctors and you say like, I'm going to use the sprouts. The sprouts higher in carbs because it's assimilated easily to energy?
Well, it's really different. I think that the war on carbs is really the war on sugar, which is processed. So bread, pizza, pasta, candy, sugars. Like you pick up a can of Coca-Cola or Mountain Dew, it's 38 grams of sugar, which is carbs. So to take something that is reduced and isolated from high fructose corn syrup, it's very different than eating corn itself. It's very different from eating, plants. So the argument about what carbs are is literally, it's like, oh, movies are bad, right? There's some movies that win Academy Awards and there's other movies that are pornographic and violent. right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's like my analogy relative to carbs. It's like too much of a generic term, and you want to get a level of specificity as to what you're consuming. So I think that sugar, glucose,
Mm-hmm.
fructose, sucrose, when it comes from whole plants, albeit
Mm-hmm.
fruits or sprouts, is very good for you. And that, if you were to peel back the onion and look at people with diabetes, type 2 diabetes in particular, fruit
Mm-hmm.
is not a problem for them unless they're eating fats and oils and proteins that create the insulin resistance so that they're not able to assimilate the proper benefits of the fruits and the sugars, so they can't process it, which causes the spike in their blood sugar levels. So
Mm-hmm.
nutrition is, doesn't have to be so complicated, but
Mm-hmm.
because we're living in a society where you go into even the healthiest of health food stores,
Proteins, fats, carbs, they're all needed to be used in their expected way. And now we're seeing, like you say, like the vegetables and the produce has a lower amount of nutrient content. So what would you say to the individuals out there when they say, like, with the ancient aspect to sprouts, do sprouts keep their nutrients, and all the components better than most other plants and vegetables, or do they have more of a power to withstand, like, the common stresses that are on the produce culture today? Do they keep their nutrient content better than any other vegetable, or how can
well,
we address their content? Yeah.
I think that the fact that they are still fully living and they are in the state, we talk about whole foods, right? But when you
Mm,
get an apple, it's removed from the tree already, right? The stem is removed from the tree. It's removed from the root system and the architecture. So it's starting to decay, right?
yes.
And vegetables, if the average leaf of lettuce is 2 weeks old and has traveled 2,000 miles, it's starting to decay. Now, there
Yeah.
may still also be the vitamin C and the chlorophyll, they'll all be there, but it's no longer living. And because
Mm,
living foods are so rare, no one's even focusing on the research on the benefits of enzymatically rich living foods. Now,
yes, that's right.
we talk about fermented foods, which are living in a different way because they're feeding the gut microbiome. But living foods like sprouts are not even on the radar
Mm,
of foods that are consumed, in the world. If anything, they're demonized because it's
yes.
so foreign. Like, we live in a society where everything should be sterilized and, they have Purell, at every turn. And so they want to kill the microbiome. So in our society, right, we have, the most common animals, human animals, dogs, cats, overeat, and as a result, get chronic illness. And if there's
Mm,
anything that really is driving me on a core level, is to see how we can help people, where on one end, we have 25,000 people a day, incomprehensible, 25,000 people a day dying of starvation. And there's so much cognitive dissonance because this is happening in Africa or India or Sudan and China and other places in the world that we have no connection to it. So it's just a
mhm.
number and it's abstract. But 25,000 people a day are dying of starvation today. And I know how hangry I get if I miss a meal, right?
Oh,
Like, if
that's
I
the
miss a
truth.
meal. And then on the other end, you have up to 100,000 people a day dying from preventable chronic illnesses, diabetes, obesity, heart disease,
Mm,
cancer, where most of these, now I'm sure there's genetics involved, but most of these things are lifestyle, affected. And what the first symptom is of a major cardiac arrest in most instances?
mm. So that's the first symptom is.
It's death.
Mm,
Like, people are dying. which is why they call heart disease a silent killer.
Yeah.
And so, everyone's like living hunky-dory until they're not.
Yeah. Yes.
And, maybe there's some new changes that will happen in this new administration, right, around diet and lifestyle. But some of the things that people are doing, shifting from seed oil to beef tallow, it's just like you're a whole missing the point, because the cooking of high heat of these carbohydrates is forming a carcinogen acrylamide, the saturated fat and the cholesterol. There's so many issues with so many people are doing that I can't go down the path. What I can do is talk about the things that are commonly well received and like tie them into sprouts. Vegetables are good for you. Sprouts are vegetables. Sprouts are vegetables that have 20 to 100 times the nutrient density of the mature vegetables. And there's this whole body of research around the medicinal chemoprotective properties of the sprouts. In particular, cruciferous vegetables have glucosinolates. Broccoli has glucoraphanin. Broccoli sprouts have 20 to 100 times the amount of glucoraphanin of mature vegetables. So therefore, if you want these chemoprotective properties, the best thing you could do is have broccoli sprouts on day 3. Period.
Really? See, it's, the comprehensive power of sprouts, when you put that together, like when somebody gets your growing kit, you say it's, when you see people that are hungry, people that are starving, then you see people, go ahead, and that literally have, they're getting nutrients, but getting the wrong type of nutrients, and they're dying from heart disease. Is maybe, I don't want to go down this rabbit hole and way, Doug. I'm just saying, like, is there any type of, I like to say, agenda that would keep somebody from eating, eating sprouts? Like, why wouldn't it be, out there more? I know it's your pit and passion.
Yeah. It's interesting. I had dinner with John Mackey, the founder of Whole Foods.
Yep.
And obviously I'm all about sprouts, and he didn't know exactly what I'm doing, right? We've known each other for a while, and I told him, like, oh my God, I love sprouts. What do you think of sprouts? And he said, sprouts are a crappy business. And I said, what do you mean? Short shelf life, low margins. They require refrigerated transportation. You're shipping mostly water weight in plastic. So as a result of those factors, there are no national or international sprouting companies. So if we think about, you got to be in your mid-30s. Chris, how old are you?
I'm 46.
46. You look fantastic.
Thank you, my friend.
so 46. Have you ever seen an advertisement on TV for sprouts?
Never.
Right.
Never seen it.
So what happens is, like, the things that we become familiar with are the things that are advertised, the things that are manipulated, the things that are ubiquitous, in it. And that's typically cooked, processed, refined, meat, dairy, and animal products that are subsidized by the U.S. government and the Farm Bill, that are highly profitable, for food service and the like. So sprouts, like, just this year, it's January 20th. There's already been recalls, right? And just in the health space, recalls on organic carrots, recalls on organic spinach, recalls on romaine lettuce. But on the other hand, there's probably 50 to 80 deaths every day from people eating meat, chicken, fish, dairy, milk, and the like. So what goes into the news is the things that they want to demonize, right? Because the guidelines from the FDA, USDA actually say chicken can be sold with salmonella on it. So active live Yes, absolutely, unequivocally, they're able to sell chicken with salmonella on it. And they now tell you, do not wash it off. Because if you try to wash it off, you're going to be splashing this salmonella all over your kitchen and making it worse. So they're trying to say, get that infected, pathogenic chicken into the stove and roast it so there's no pink or white areas, and that should be killing it. So there's this like madness associated with it, but because, and obviously the conditions of which they're growing the chickens and then harvesting or slaughtering the chickens is so contaminated that it's inevitable and unavoidable to actually have pathogens on it. Wow. So I don't want to talk about fear factor, right? But I want to talk about sprouts. So the reason why sprouts aren't ubiquitous is because no one ever figured out a way to advertise them or promote them, et cetera. Now we live in a society, where if you listen to any of the top podcasts, people are promoting green powders. In your 40s, like I've had green powders for the last 25 years from vitamin greens and health greens, et cetera. But if you can get a green powder that can actually do nice packaging, good branding, Athletic Greens became AG1, and all of a sudden, the top people are communicating this in a way, you now have millions of people every day consuming something that had been around for a long time. So one of the things, like if I step back in a deeply meditative state, I know that there are things that weren't things that are now things. And the main thing is somebody determined that they want to make this thing a thing. Like someone, right? So someone determined that they want to make electric cars cool. They would figure out how to design them well, how to get the batteries to have longer life, how to create charging stations, how to create federal subsidies and the like. And then all of a sudden things, take off. So in my world, what I told John, back to my conversation with John Mackey, was that I am not going to grow sprouts, sell sprouts, and go down that nest, because I understand it's not a good business. But if you could provide a simple piece of hardware, right, like a jar and a filter and a stand with seeds, and people could sprout on their own, well, that changes everything, because now people are empowered where you have a long shelf life. The shelf life on seeds, when I was researching the sprout book, there were seeds that were 1,200 years old.
1,200 years old?
That germinated.
No.
So, yes. So seeds have nature's preservative. They've got phytic acids. They've got enzyme inhibitors. They've got lectins.
Yes, keep going. This is great, Doug.
Yeah, so this is the flow that I'm tuned into. That just because for me, I obviously had other choices. I didn't have to live in the desert, but I chose to live in a environmental desert at Wonder Valley Hot Springs under, dark sky, different galaxies, soaking in hot springs. So this was a beautiful place for me to be, but no health food stores, no farmers markets, no restaurants. So if I wanted to live a clean, healthy, plant-based life, I needed to grow my own vegetables. And it could take weeks or months or years to grow your own vegetables. Like that's how I fell into the sprouting, and life has never been the same.
That's what I think with your passion, like when you're moving this forward, where do you see, like, I guess as it's progressing and it's getting more and more people are getting into this, are you finding it with your message? Are you finding it now that it's getting more accepted? I know we do the AG1s and such, and you're having these different types of, components of vegetables out there that are really being, consumed. But do you see like the sprout industry like really starting to take off because they're starting to see the effect of the nutrient density of the plant?
Yeah, I think that, we're starting to see a snowballing effect. Like my little book, which launched on April 20th, in April 7th, 2020, during COVID, the Sprout book became a national bestseller, broke
Wow.
into the top 69 books on Amazon, of all books on Amazon. And so now it's in the 10th edition, having sold, over 50,000 copies. And it was just translated into the Spanish language. So we're seeing that like all of these things are just stacking. And it's going to be a domino effect. It's going to be a snowballing effect because it makes too much sense. And what Sprouts never had a voice like they do now. They never had the social media. Like, I could go on a podcast like Rich Roll and 1 million people, will hear that messaging, and maybe a few people will act immediately. And then some people, when they hear me on Dr. Axe's podcast, or they hear on another one, and then finally it will flip. And as we start to make Sprouts more ubiquitous and they start to show up in more recipes, did you know that Sprouts are a GLP-1 agonist?
Really? Yeah,
because they're a high fiber, low fat, low calorie. So the more you're eating, you're getting the triggering of the satiation and you're getting, the GLP-1 secretion. But the more you eat, the more GLP-1 you get. And because Sprouts are high fiber, low fat, low calorie, and you can't overeat them, like they are unequivocally the best weight loss food in the world.
That is amazing. That's why I was saying with GLP, so people out there listening, remember they're having this big movement with GLP to see if you actually can feel full. And so you're saying eating more Sprouts can help that. So when you see that you could actually do weight loss, plus you're getting all the nutrients, you're starting to see this movement towards that. With your experience though, like, do you find that more people are starting to just notice that they're losing weight, or has it always been, or do they start to tell you like, Doug, I'm starting to notice that I'm starting to drop weight?
Well, I think that this weight, there's two factors of weight. There's some people that are vain, right? There's some people that are sick. I want to focus on the people that are sick and see how we can help them. And so I have a friend, Red Foo from LMFAO, and he started to eat Sprouts, and he became raw plant-based, raw vegan, and he lost 33 pounds. And at age 49, he had so much energy, he decided that he was going to, for the first time in his life, play a competitive tennis and go be in a tournament at age 49 and earn his first ATP point at 40 years old. So he lost the weight, he unleashed the energy, and now he's going berserk.
Now, Doug, on this, when you're seeing this much energy production, are there certain nutrients? I know it's high in amino acids and proteins and carbs. Do you find like Sprouts have like a certain high amount of a certain vitamin or mineral, and it's sort of a geared like to treat it like certain, not treat, but help certain conditions? Because like a lot of my patients, they'll have things like with methylation, like with the liver problems, or they'll have congested lymph nodes. I know it helps the whole, a plethora of different things, but do you find that there are certain nutrients it's specifically high in for specific types of conditions?
Well, it's really interesting when you think about high dose vitamin C, right? The impact of vitamin C being a very potent healing vitamin. When you take something that as simple as a lentil, that's been the staple of the plant-based diet around the world for millennia. When you sprout a lentil, you increase the vitamin C by 300%. And you
Wow.
quadruple the antioxidants. So what's happening is there's bodies of work, autoimmune disease and heart disease and cancers. Like I had someone very close to me who was 64 years old, and they had chicken legs and a distended gut. And that gut, when I first met them, I was like, that is basically an impacted large intestine. That is your colon rising up, stuffed with fecal plaque, which is all disease. All disease.
All disease.
It's all disease. So when you think about eating things that are fiber rich, enzymatically rich, nutrient dense, it's a whole new world. So I'm not saying like there's a perfect formula for treating any disease, but in general, like we know the autophagy that can occur with just water fasting.
Yes.
So
yes.
in a way, food as medicine really involves the elimination of excess and really doing precision nutrition with getting the minimum variety with the maximum impact to help enliven the immune system so that people could be alive. And if we think about the digestive tract, if you consume a piece of meat, I don't care whether it's grass-fed, or it's factory farmed, it's going to take 24 hours to get through the system. It's going to be decaying. In order for the body to break it down, it's going to be creating acids, hydrochloric-like acids in the body, which is why the number one over-the-counter drugs are Tums, Rolaids, Pepto-Bismols, etc. And people have gout and all these issues. So we're in this wild time of nutrition that for me to simply talk about eating plants and eating sprouts, I get trolls, I get all sorts of wild stuff. And I'm like, hey, do whatever you want. But this is what, seems most intuitive. And if you can tune in to this, you'll feel, very good. So there's a lot of fringe diets, trendy diets. This is not there's nothing new about sprouts, especially as I speak to someone who's part Korean, right? Sprouts were
that's totally
diet.
So with that, I know because there's a lot of, carnivore diet, and there's a lot of different types of diets that we just mentioned. In your normal day, I know you consume quite a bit of sprouts, but in the mornings, do you like to do smoothies and do sprouts? Do you usually try to do, since it has so much proteins, do you try to diversify from the sprouts, or do you usually just eat sprouts every single meal?
I eat sprouts and fruit and sea vegetables.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's why I eat a lot of sea vegetables too. Because when I was a kid, Doug, we ate seaweed soup. When I was a kid, I used to eat seaweed soup, and I ate tons of seaweed. We'd wrap rice with our seaweed, almost like a sushi roll. I want to make sure though, everybody out there, when they do get the sprout kit, and I want to promote the book, the Sprout book, when they start to grow, does it take a lot of space for them to grow this? Because it's there's so much stuff involved, but is it big or small?
No, it's literally, I was growing 6 jars in 1 cubic foot, and I was going thousands of calories a day. So the basic sprouting kit is 6 inches wide, 10 inches deep, and it's beautiful on the countertop. And that was designed, took me much longer, right? Very humbling trying to design physical hardware products and get them made. But what I loved about, the sprouting kit that I sent you was anything that touched the sprouts was glass and stainless steel. And easy to grip. So look, Chris, I'm going to leave us on this note that sprouts are vegetables. You can grow them in days without soil, sunshine, or fertilizer. I started the sprouting company really as a public service to get the message out there, to raise the standards of the equipment, of the seeds, of the distribution, of the communication. You could download the free Sprout app, sproutingcompany.com. It's an iOS app just to help support people in their sprouting journey. And I think that's, where we are today.
That's beautiful. I know we got to make sure time's important. I want to know everybody out there know how sincere person you are with this passionate message. But let us know, Doug, where to find you on Instagram and find you on social media.
I'm Doug Evans on Instagram, on TikTok, on X, but LinkedIn. So I'm very easy to find, and the company is the Sprouting Company.
Oh, man.
Just try to keep it simple and accessible to everybody.
Well, we definitely love having you on here. I want to have you on here as many times as we can, as many times as you want, because I just love hearing about all the advancements in the nutrients within the plant world. And it really is important to me, especially here in the office. So everybody out there, if you love this content, please give us a comment, like and subscribe. And anybody out there that you know that may have an issue of saying, I need to think about going more in this route in my diet, please send them this video. But also like and also follow Doug's page. He has great posts, and he talks all things plant life and sprout. So Doug, again, thank you, my friend, for coming on here with us. And to everybody out there, we really appreciate you from here at the Ancient Health Podcast. Until the next time, have a great day.